Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about 10 disturbing horror movies you need to see. And with that, let's get to the list.
I believe heaven and hell are one and the same. The soul belongs to heaven and the body to hell.
The House That Jack Built is a 2018 psychological horror movie. Written and directed by Lars von Trier, it stars Matt Dillon, Bruno Ganz, and Uma Thurman. A failed architect and vicious psychopath, Jack recounts his elaborately orchestrated murders, each as he views them a towering work of art that defines his life's work as a serial killer.
You might as well be a serial killer. Sorry, but you do kind of look like one.
So Lars von Trier is known for his demented, disturbing, and just uncomfortable movies. And this is one of the most of his. I haven't seen all of them, but the ones I have seen, to me, this one just got under my skin. It made my blood run cold. This movie, there are so many haunting scenes in it, things that just will stick with you and disturb you long after you've seen it. And Matt Dillon is just amazing in this. He is so believable as this character. You just feel so creeped out by this guy. It's also beautifully shot, the artistry in it, the design, some of the special effects, and things, especially as you get towards the final act, are just really awe-inspiring. But there's one scene in this in particular that I know sticks with a lot of people, and I'm not going to spoil it here in case you haven't seen this, but it was one of the most uncomfortable things I have seen while watching a movie. But beyond just being disturbing and uncomfortable, this movie feels like a real work of art. Just the way it's put together, the way it's edited, the way it's written. It's, yes, disturbing, but also a beautiful movie. So if you have yet to see The House That Jack Built, I think it should absolutely be added to your list.
You will serve me for the rest of your life.
Chained is a 2012 Canadian psychological horror movie. Directed by Jennifer Lynch, it stars Vincent D'Onofrio, Eamon Farron, and Gina Phillips. A young man is held captive by a cab-driving serial killer and must make a life or death choice between following in his captor's footsteps or breaking free.
Excuse me, that was our exit?
Mom, I've got a child back here and you're beginning to scare the bejesus out of me.
Oh my God!
This movie is so good. It's well done in every way. It keeps you guessing, it makes you uncomfortable, and keeps you that way. It just freezes you in this constant feeling of uneasiness and just waiting for the other foot to drop to see what disturbing thing is going to happen next. And the cast in this is so good, but Vincent D'Onofrio definitely steals the show. He is one of the more creepy, unnerving serial killer characters you'll see in a more hyper-real kind of movie. He just makes you so quickly forget that you're watching an actor and just start to loathe this guy and want to see the worst stuff happen to him. But he just continues on his rampage, and it gets more and more disturbing as the movie goes. But there's this real powerful sense of dread that this entire movie has, where it just makes you feel dirty and unclean, but also helpless, and it just makes you hate the situation you're in, but also not be able to look away from this film. But it's really wild how much this movie has flown under the radar, because a lot of the movies on this list, if you're a big fan of horror, you've probably heard of, but this is one of those ones that even as a fan of horror, up until just a couple years ago, I had never even heard of it. But if you're looking for something really messed up and disturbing, Chained is a fantastic pick.
He's already here.
The Dark and the Wicked is a 2020 supernatural horror movie. Written and directed by Brian Bertino, it stars Marin Ireland and Michael Abbott Jr. The story follows two siblings who are summoned back to their family farm to await the inevitable death of their father. But what initially appears to be a timeless ritual of loss and remembrance turns out to be something very different.
She would sit
right beside him, just whispering. But you weren't talking to him.
This film just feels like it's dripping in this uncomfortable blackness, just this somber feeling of uneasiness with dour and evil vibes. It's also full of some really fantastic visuals. There's all these eerie and creepy, just really disturbing things that happen throughout this movie, but they kind of like slowly build upon themselves and just add to the overall uneasiness and disturbing qualities that this film has. It's another one that is just void of all fun, all happiness. There's no humor. It's just plain uncomfortable misery on display. But it's a brilliantly written movie. The dialogue, the cast, the way it's shot, the editing, everything is super on point. And it's another just criminally underrated movie, but it's one that I highly, highly recommend.
Just a sweet little boy. That's what boys do.
We Need to Talk About Kevin is a 2011 psychological horror thriller. Directed by Lynn Ramsey, it stars Tilda Swinton, Ezra Miller, and Jasper Noel. Kevin's mother struggles to love her strange child, despite the increasingly dangerous things he says and does as he grows up. But Kevin is just getting started, and his final act will be beyond anything anyone imagined.
Did you say mommy?
No.
Shouldn't he be talking by now?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Ball?
No.
He's just a boy. Just a sweet little boy.
This movie is just chilling. It's one of those that is very much set in the real world, and what happens in this is as prevalent as anything we've seen. I mean, this stuff happens all the time, even still. There are psychopaths that are growing up, parents that are kind of aware, they know there's something not quite right with their son or daughter, but they just can't quite do anything about it. And I'm a big fan of true crime. Besides horror movies, true crime is something I spend a lot of my time watching, at least in the background as I'm editing and things like that. But as far as a fiction movie goes, this one just feels like it nails what it must be like to be a mother in this situation. And Tilda Swinton is one of those actors that she just is amazing at any role you put her in, and she once again just kills it here. And as much as I am not a fan of Ezra Miller, the guy has done some really weird stuff, some crimes. I mean, just doesn't seem to be a very great guy. I am one of those people that for the most part separate the art from the artist, and he gives a hell of a performance here. Like, unfortunately, even though he may be a bad human, or at least it seems like he is a damn good actor. But this is another one of those movies that just chilled me to my core. I couldn't look away from it, but at the same time, I was so disturbed and just uncomfortable this entire movie. It is a little bit of a slow burn and a mostly dialogue driven kind of movie though, so don't go into this expecting a lot of action and crazy things like that or gore or any of that. It's, you know, it's one of those dramatic, emotional, disturbing movies that focuses on the human psychology and the things that characters in it are doing. But if you're a fan of dramatically disturbing, psychological kind of movies, this is one you definitely need to see.
Never leave your loved ones alone. You should know that by now.
Brimstone is a 2016 Western psychological horror movie. Directed by Martin Koolhoven, it stars Dakota Fanning, Guy Pearce, and Kit Harington. A frontier woman turns fugitive when she is wrongly accused of a crime she didn't commit, and is being hunted by a vengeful preacher.
And I am his dog. The sheepdog that get the lambs back on track when they stray off the path. And some of you have strayed, haven't you?
I mean, holy shit. I discovered this movie about a year ago. It's wild that I had never heard of it up until then, but I was blown away by it. Talk about a disturbing, uncomfortable movie that is just bordering on depressing. It's so melancholy. It is void of all happiness. it is one uncomfortable, just fucked up thing after another that happens to the characters in this movie. It's one of those kind of movies that if you're wanting something happy, something that makes you feel good, then this is definitely the wrong one for that. But at the same time, it's so interesting, it's so compelling, it definitely sticks with you long after you've seen it. And the cast is really incredible in this. This is definitely my favorite performance from Dakota Fanning. She just completely becomes this character, is full of emotion. It's so dramatic, the things that she goes through, and you're wanting so bad to see her win, and just one horrible thing after another just keeps happening to her. And I mean, I've seen Guy Pearce play a villain before, but he is just terrifying in this role. He plays this vengeful preacher that is just so disturbing to watch. His dialogue, even his accent, the way he says words just makes chills down your spine. And it's also a movie that really captures that dirtiness, that griminess of what the world was like in the West in this time period. It doesn't in any way glamorize it or make it this romantic period like a lot of Westerns do. Instead, it shows the grittiness, the dour sadness that everybody is kind of filled with at the time, with this world of just fighting tooth and nail to survive. But I think Brimstone is a truly special movie, and if you have yet to see it, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. Found is a 2012 horror movie, written and directed by Scott Shermer. It stars Gavin Brown, Ethan Philbeck, and Phyllis Monroe. A bullied and misunderstood boy must grapple with the knowledge that his brother is a serial killer.
My brother keeps a human head in his closet. At one point, it had thoughts and feelings, and it kissed somebody it loved. Now it's just a bloody head and a bowling ball bag.
Here's another one that is so good, but so criminally underrated, it just blows my mind. Yes, it is a very small movie, a limited production indie kind of movie with a cast of people you're not gonna recognize. But I just feel like is so good at what it's trying to do. It makes you just feel this boy's plight, and everything around him is just so fucked up. It's creepy, it's unnerving, it's very, very, very uncomfortable. And it also gets really gory, really brutal and bloody, especially in the final act. And it just blows my mind because for such an unknown cast, they all give really good performances in this. I just think it has such an interesting premise of something that I haven't really seen done before. These two brothers, and one knows that his older brother that he looks up to is a serial killer, and what he is going to do with that information, and that moral dilemma. Even though he's a pretty young kid, he still is in this situation of not knowing what to do, and it just plays out in such a compelling way. I think it's well written, well done in every way, but like I said, it's a very limited budget kind of movie, so you have to be a fan of indie horror to really vibe with this one. But I think for anyone that's looking for a disturbing, dark, demented little movie, Found is a fantastic pick. The Eyes of My Mother is a 2016 black and white horror movie. Written, directed, and edited by Nicholas Peach in his directorial debut. It stars Keegan-Michael Key, Olivia Bond, and Diana Agostini. A young, lonely woman is consumed by her deepest and darkest desires after tragedy strikes her quiet country life.
I remember I was fascinated by how the inside of the body looked. She always hoped I would be a surgeon one day.
The fact that this movie is in black and white just really adds to the disturbing and just uncomfortable nature of it. It just feels that much more creepy, that much more void of life, void of anything happy, even remotely so. but it's one that really surprised me with how savage it is, how just gross at times and weird, and it just is so twisted and goes in a lot of different directions. And I really appreciated the fact that we get to see a female, a woman being this demented, bizarre killer, so to speak, because so often in movies we see a guy as this psychopath, as this cunning killer that is not quite right. And so to see a woman in that role really adds a different flavor, a different angle to it. But holy hell, Kika Maglianes is amazing in this. She is so twisted, so unhinged, and just goes wild in all these different directions, and surprised me constantly at the levels of disturbing, demented things that she does and directions that this movie takes it. But I think The Eyes of My Mother is a very disturbing gem that if you're looking for something to give you nightmares tonight, this is a great pick.
You just never know where the day's gonna take you.
Coming Home in the Dark is a 2021 New Zealand psychological horror movie. Directed by James Ashcroft, it stars Daniel Gillies, Eric Thompson, and Miriam McDowell. Ruthless drifters take a man and his family on a nightmarish road trip that forces the man to confront his past.
Mandrake. I'm a magician. I make things disappear.
So I just talked about this one in my last video, so I'm not going to talk much about it here, but it's just another very well done, truly uncomfortable, disturbing movie that has some shocking moments, a lot of tension. It's just dripping in anxiety and uncomfortability. It keeps you engaged the entire runtime. It's not a slow burn. It is a much more fast-paced, twisted movie that goes in a lot of different directions, but it is very upsetting, very twisted, and really disturbing. So if you have yet to see Coming Home in the Dark, do yourself a favor and check this one out.
Wait! I don't want to be sick.
My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To is a 2020 psychological drama horror movie. Written and directed by Jonathan Cortez. It stars Owen Campbell, Patrick Fugit, and Ingrid Schramm. It's about Jessie and her brother Dwight, who care for their little brother who has an unusual illness, which forces him to ingest human blood to survive.
I don't think that I can keep doing this.
He's our brother.
He's sick. We shouldn't be doing the things that we're doing.
So the premise of this movie, and even the trailer or clips that I'm playing for you right now, it may feel like something you've seen before, and I think that's probably why a lot of people haven't seen it. They're just thinking, oh, it's just another vampire movie, skip, move forward. This is not that. This is a very different feeling movie. It is much more based in reality and in the real world, and it feels very cold and uncomfortable because of that. It doesn't have a supernatural angle. It doesn't go into this bizarre fictional world where you can feel like you could just separate yourself from it. Instead, it feels much more realistic, and because of that, it feels much more jarring. It's also incredibly well performed. This cast is so good. I've been very impressed with Owen Campbell and everything I've seen him in. I thought he was just great in Candyland, which is another great movie over on Tubi if you haven't seen it. But in this movie, he plays just a very different, helpless, innocent, sweet character, but that he has this need, this illness that makes him have to ingest human blood to stay alive. And so kind of like in the movie Found, the characters in this movie are put in a position where they're conscious, they got to decide between right and wrong. It's like their family or to do what's right. And it just is a very interesting battle and struggle. And they don't always do the things you would expect them to do in this movie. It doesn't exactly go in the directions that you think it will. It's twisted, it's uncomfortable. There are some really bleak and disturbing moments in this, but it's very well written, well produced, well edited, just a great little movie that needs a lot more attention, because if you like disturbing, drama-filled, dialogue, powerful, indie horror, then My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To is one you absolutely need to see.
on another level. What if I'm getting it all wrong? All the good girls go to hell.
Saint Maud is a 2019 British psychological horror thriller, written and directed by Rose Glass in her feature directorial debut. It stars Morfydd Clark and Jennifer Eel. The story follows Maud, a hospice nurse who is a recent convert to Roman Catholicism and becomes obsessed with a former dancer in her care, who she believes she must save the soul of by any means necessary.
All the good girls go to hell, 'cause even God herself.
I just want to see you loosen up.
I've got more important things on my mind.
This is such a good movie, and it's one that unfortunately just didn't get a really good release because it was made in 2019, kind of came out in some film festivals, things like that, but was set for a 2020 theatrical release. But because of the pandemic, that didn't happen, and so this movie just kind of was plopped online. Not a lot of people have seen it. It's still one of those that if you're a big fan of A24 and you heard about this, then you saw it. But for the most part, not nearly as many people have seen this that I think should. But this movie is incredible. The visuals of it, the style of it, the way costumes are set, the set design, I mean, the characters involved, just everything about this feels meticulous and polished and well executed. And as someone who was brought up in a very abusive religious way, bordering on cult levels of abuse, this movie just got under my skin because sometimes some people, not all religious people, not all, anybody that believes in anything, I'm not judging or casting dispersions on any of you. You believe what you want to believe. It's just a matter of, does your beliefs abuse other people? That's the question. But there are some people out there that become so overly spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call it, that it takes over their life and it can start to leak out onto others. And so this movie just gave me chills because it reminded me so much of my own upbringing, the things I saw from my mom, the way she acted at times. It is a really sad, but also very scary situation when someone becomes that way. And it isn't the spirituality, it isn't the religion that makes them that way. Instead, it's the mental instability, it's mental health issues, combined with this overly zealous religious beliefs and stuff that can make for a really bad situation. And that's the one that I grew up in. But this movie just reminded me so much of that kind of way of thinking, and it really hit home. But God Almighty, I swear, this movie is uncomfortable. It's shocking at times, very surprising, and just a truly disturbing and special movie. But that's it for me today. I would love to hear in the comments down below. Give me some recommendations. What are some other disturbing movies that you think I need to see? And I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or you can become a channel member by clicking on the join button down there and help support the channel that way. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 horror movies you need to see over on Tubi right now. And I'll see you guys next time.